Let's welcome in Congressman Mark Pocan now. The government shutdown may be over, but the gridlock seems to still remain, mostly because it's the gridlock's in the Republican caucus, so there's really not much to do about it. Congressman Pocan, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good morning. And you're exactly right. I had another person from the district, radio person, say, "Oh, talk about Dems and Republicans not getting along." I go, "I wish it was just that simple. It's
Yeah.
it's it's a Republican on Republican fights. That's why they can't put any meaningful legislation in front of us." And it's because the speaker, Mike Johnson, is the weakest speaker, I think, in modern history by giving all the power to the executive branch. We're not a co-equal branch anymore. We're a subservient branch of government the way he operates. So thank you for saying what is my daily dredge while I'm here in Washington.
Well, and again, it's not top of mind for most Wisconsinites, but while we're on the topic, you've got, Marjorie Taylor Greene of all people, breaking with Trump, and now apparently, again, according to one report, Nancy Mace of where's Nancy Mace from South
Yeah,
Carolina?
no,
Mike,
Nancy Mace is truly a sociopath, and she will do anything to get attention. And she'll
she
say one thing
loves
one day.
attention. Oh my goodness.
Her mom needed to hug her. Mrs. Mace, you should have hugged your daughter when she was young.
Oh,
So I don't take those reports that much, but I do know there are many Republicans who are quietly saying, "This is ridiculous. We're not doing anything. How come?" And they're going to have more people, I think, leaving, not early, but not running again because of Mike Johnson. So, I mean, he really will go down in history, not just because I don't like his politics, but because he has been such a weak speaker, not standing up for the institution that's a co-equal branch of government. But yeah, Nancy Mace, I mean, I used to say, like, a Marjorie Taylor Greene, at least her broken clock's right twice a day. That's how, she gets right. With Nancy Mace, she's just a crazy clock with
where the hands
no,
are
no,
going in all
she's never
directions at
given the right
once.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's giving everything in numbers above 24.
but the thing
So
is, for whether it's she or Green or some of these others who are now kind of going public with their criticisms of the speaker, it really shows a move towards self-preservation because so many of these folks have a 100% voting record with Donald Trump, and yet you see what just happened this week in a special congressional election in Tennessee where the Republican did win the seat, Mark, but what's the
yeah.
story behind that Republican quote unquote victory?
Well, I mean, it was way off from where the Republican percent of the vote is. I think it was just under 9% was the victory, but it should have been strongly into double digits. And if that was extrapolated across the country, we would win 43 seats next fall. For Democrats, we'd flip 46 seats, I should say. So that is something that's concerning to Republicans. But Representative Stefanik right now is kind of one of the Republicans leading the fight against Mike Johnson. And I think especially among the women in their caucus, because don't forget, he's this Christian nationalist. He has a Christian nationalist flag outside of his office. I think there is another layer of dysfunction within the Republican Party that it has become truly a good old boys network. And that's why I think some of the women are really feeling the pressure because they're being even more irrelevant in the modern Republican Party.
We're talking to Congressman Mark Pocan as Congress gets back in session, more or less, after the government shutdown that had taken place. And by the way, when you mentioned flipping 40 plus seats, if anybody goes, "Oh, that sounds like an exaggeration," trust me, as somebody who still bears the scars of 2010,
Yeah.
the shellacking when Republicans flipped just over 40 or just over 40 seats. It is very much the kind of thing that can happen in 2026. Again, nobody's counting chickens before they're hatched. But as we talked to with Craig Gilbert the other day, I mean, the signs are there that if Republicans continue on the path that they're on right now, the voters are not going to take kindly to it in November of next year.
Yeah, and I was trying to talk to someone recently. I mean, the numbers of a district are still the numbers of a district. Some districts you'll never be able to win because there are some Republicans who, no matter what Trump does, are going to be Republican. But it's the where do independent voters go? Where's the intensity of Democratic voters? Are we fired up to get out and vote? And where's the intensity of the Republican voters? And if Republican voters and independents are saying, "I'm paying too much for groceries, for durable goods, for utilities, for healthcare," they're not going to come out for Republicans. And if Democrats and independents are concerned about what's happening to our country under Donald Trump, and they do come out, I mean, that's the wave that comes out of a potential 2026 election year.
But it isn't helped not just by the actions of the Trump administration, but in something as basic as the president of the United States, in being asked about affordability,
Yeah.
saying it's a con job, that the focus
Right.
on affordability, that those are his words, it's a con job. Mark, what percentage of Democratic candidate commercials will
Yeah.
play that clip back next year, and why isn't it 100%?
Think about it. A guy who just gold leafed everything in the Oval Office and is building a ballroom to the White House that's going to be larger than the White House and at a square foot cost of 10 times what it costs to build any other ballroom by industry standards, is telling you that affordability is a con job. People are smarter. If you're paying more for groceries. I just paid about 12, 13% more for what I go on a real regular basis for groceries here in DC. And I noticed when I went this week, it was about $20 more than what I usually spend just for 2 bags of groceries. And I started doing the math on all of this, and we know people are paying more, but whether it's groceries or it's your utility costs because of
Health
changes through the big
insurance.
ugly law,
Hmm.
health insurance, you're going to see even more next year in your premiums that you're paying or your employer's paying, or you may be doing a copay. You're just seeing this, and it doesn't look like he clearly doesn't get it if he's saying it's a con job. So that is the issue, I think, for 2026, and I don't think the Republicans get it.
We're talking to Congressman Mark Pocan, and speaking of the Affordable Care Act and the huge spike in premiums because the enhanced tax credits expired and Republicans would not go along with any plan to extend them. The plan or the agreement to end the government shutdown called for a vote in the Senate on perhaps restoring slash extending those enhanced premium tax credits. I know you can't speak for the Senate, much less Senate Republicans, but will there be significance in a vote that is reportedly going to be taking place next week? In other words, it may sound rose colored glasses of me, but is there the possibility that next week we do actually see enough Senate Republicans say, our constituents are going to get hurt by this, and we're going to kind of defy the president and go along with this? Or is that really just pie in the sky thinking?
So it could very likely get a positive vote in the Senate. It's unlikely it'll ever come up in the House because we have the Freedom Caucus adamantly against this, and all you need are like 3 people to oppose something, and you kill it in the House, right? So it won't even come up for a vote. So, the problem is those 7 Democrats and 1 independent senator that joined the Republicans to reopen government are involved in a game of fantasy Congress. And I understand fantasy football can be fun, fantasy Congress not so much. When you trade away something for a vote that's not realistic because you're never going to get a vote in the House or approval by the president. So, unfortunately, it was a bad deal they agreed to, but we are reopened, and that's good. We're fighting in other ways to get health care for people. And honestly, the real fight comes from your constituents. When people call up and say, this is my rate increase, how come I'm paying so much more? That'll put more pressure on people. But what's going to happen in the Senate next week will be not very exciting, I'm afraid, because it's going nowhere.
Congressman Mark Pocan is with us, and we spoke about one of your Wisconsin colleagues earlier, Congressman Derek Van Orden, and the comments that he made about the reports that there was a second missile strike on one of the alleged drug boats. And the congressman from Western Wisconsin justifying it and saying, as somebody who served in the military, said it in his patently condescending way. Let me put this in a way that people who have not been to war can kind of visualize better. If you're on the battlefield and there's an enemy tank and you launch a javelin missile and it doesn't completely destroy the tank, you launch another one, regardless if there are tank crewmen hanging out of the hatch. So long as there was a fraction of the boat floating, it was a viable military target. It was a viable, lawfully targeted enemy combatant vessel. Those folks have been designated as terrorists by the State Department. I don't know that you've heard that quote before, but
No.
I certainly found a lot to take issue with in there.
Well, I mean, here's the classic thing is when they instruct folks in the military, the example they give of an illegal order is around if there are people left after a ship, is hit, that you cannot kill them. It is literally the example of what an illegal order is, and it's what happened. So, maybe we understand why Derek's career is not in the military after his insight. And I guess I should wave my fingers for people listening because they're not going to see him. But his insight is this justification. I mean, obviously, Daddy Trump says something. Derek says how high he'll jump, whatever it takes. In this case, though, people know that it's wrong. And now we also, on top of it, to add on to this, the Inspector General just said that the whole Signal gate with the Secretary Hegseth using Signal as an unsafe, unsecure app could have put the lives of soldiers at risk. This guy is on pretty thin ice right now.
Or at least he should be. As Alicia notes, for someone who was a senior chief petty officer in the United States Navy, I know that Derek Van Orden knows better. He knows people clinging to debris in the water are not threats. And the thing that needs to be, people say, well, why should we care about them? Because as we learned in stories of past wars, those could be our people clinging onto a vessel afterwards. And whether Pete Hegseth says he doesn't care about rules of engagement or not, they still exist.
Yeah. And for Derek, if you're, someone who wants to have a town show, have your membership for a town hall, you're seen as a threat, right? I mean, Derek's got a lot of threats out there. So I get it. There's snowflakes out there, regardless of whether you're in the military or not. Derek is clearly a snowflake and a sycophant to whatever Donald Trump will say. But this was something that, fortunately, Dems and Republicans, this is one of the few areas I've actually seen Dems and Republicans look like we are a co-equal branch of government. We are standing together against what happened here. And I have some other theories of why, but the bottom line is this was wrong and it does have to be investigated. And Congress, in this one rare case, Pat is doing the right thing.
All right. Congressman Mark Pocan has joined us to talk about the restarting after the government shutdown. And later in our next hour, we'll talk to Sean O'Malley about your money in the markets and, the lack of government data and whether this economy is artificially propped up or not, which could create a whole new world of problems for the folks on Capitol Hill that I know you're following. Mark, thank you so much, as always, for the visit. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Pat. Appreciate it.